I want you to kind of reiterate what you said for anybody who maybe missed it earlier. I thought it was really poignant what you said about, the governor can talk about this, but what about the real practical issues that children like Harmony are facing day in and day out with state agencies?
Yeah, I think, it's not uncommon for a politician to get involved and speak out on a hot button issue when it gets a lot of attention. Of course, I'd be curious about this governor's record on how much budget he allocates to child protective services, because typically those agencies and organizations will tell you that they are underfunded, they're understaffed, all by the state, and they're constantly requesting money so they can hire more people and hire, and pay more money to get better qualified people. But when you don't have a whole lot of funding, you can't pay a whole lot of money, you kind of have to take who you can get. And just frequently, they just don't have the highest caliber employees. And they're, in addition to that, they're grossly understaffed. So you have these underpaid individuals who are not ideally suited for the job and are not the best educated and the best trained. And then you give them substantial caseloads all over the state and county. And I think that's a problem whenever you have an agency like this, and there's a lack of oversight or lack of investigation, because there's so many cases they're trying to manage, and they're trying to deal with so many parents and so many kids and so many troubled home lives that it becomes very, very difficult to manage. So I think that's an underlying issue whenever they want to look at something like this. I think, you have some constitutional concerns as well. I mean, I think, and I'm not saying that these parents are ideal. I mean, they clearly had issues, but I don't think that anyone wants to take the bright line position that, hey, if you get arrested of a violent crime or you get charged with a crime, then you're automatically by default unfit and the court needs to take your kids away. I don't think anybody wants to going to say that. I think the litmus test always is and should be, what's in the best interest of the child. What's the child's home life like? So if a person's charged with a drug offense or a violent offense and they're arrested, I don't think anyone thinks that, okay, we ought to come in now and take the kids out of the house. As far as whether or not you should always automatically conduct an investigation, fine, put that in the budget. Good luck with that. I think if the governor wants to do that every time somebody gets arrested, hey, why don't you ask the public defender's office how many of their clients have kids? Mm-hmm. I'm pretty certain they don't want to start funding investigations to all those cases with all those kids. And it's just a systemic problem when it comes to something like this and these types of cases. So I just think it's a little bit, I think it's kind of tacky for the governor to get involved in a high profile situation unless he has a history of really trying to fund these types of agencies.
Mm-hmm. Amen. Really appreciate your thoughts and the perspective on that, John. And I know you see it. When I know you practice criminal law and you're in court day in and day out with various cases, and even though we're talking about child welfare cases, something very different, and that's going to be in the family division, and there are going to be civil things going on. They're still related. They really are. To your point, a lot of these issues will come up sometimes in criminal court, and that there's a companion case going in civil court for the kids. And to make this even sadder, going to share some more information that I've said on this program before and can't say it enough. This makes it even more heartbreaking. There is a wonderful family that wanted to adopt Harmony. They adopted her biological brother, Jameson. Jameson is 5 years old right now. And his father is a fantastic journalist. His name is Blair Miller. He is a colleague of mine. I've respected his work for many, many years. He works in the D.C. area now. Even worked close by you, John. He was in the Charlotte, North Carolina market, which you may even be able to get in Columbia, depending on the reach. But at any rate, Blair and his husband adopted 3 little boys. They are like angels to these 3 little children, and they wanted to adopt Harmony too. And I don't know all the particulars, but I know the gist. The Reader's Digest version is that Harmony and her brother Jameson were in foster care together at one point, and they also became separated at another point. And Jameson was able to be legally adopted by Blair Miller and his husband, and they wanted to adopt Harmony too, but legally, the court had her in the custody of her biological father. And they are, of course, as you can imagine, beside themselves with this, with Harmony being missing and trying to do everything they can to get the word out. Blair came on Vinny's program just the week before last. And it is so sad. This little boy wants nothing more for his sister to be home, and they would gladly adopt her now. I know they would. They wanted her then. And it makes it so sad that this child was wanted by a family who would do right by her. But legally that couldn't happen because balls were dropped by just so many people failing this child. Your reaction, please, John.
Well, I mean, that's certainly a tragedy. I mean, just overall, because you're correct, the ball was dropped on so many levels. I mean, just so we're clear, I agree there should have been a home investigation. But I think what people need to understand is, what the goal of Child Protective Services is. I mean, typically, the goal is to, if possible, reunite the child with the family. I mean, that's always the goal of Child Protective Services. And because, once again, the state can't, pluck every child out of every troubled home and house them in foster care until they're 18 years old. I mean, it's an overworked system as it is. I mean, but obviously there's certain parents that have issues, and that's why some of the services the Child Protective Services does have, they have counseling. If they have parents that have alcohol problems or drug problems or anger management problems, or they can't keep a job because of education and can't provide a stable household, they're supposed to provide services with that parent to try to get them to a level where it's okay and safe to bring the child back to the home. And the reality of it is this, there are always going to be circumstances where you have parents that are never going to be rich, So I think that's just a tough call for everybody.
Yeah, it really is. Really appreciate your insight on this one. Attorney John Mobley, thank you so much.